Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here with the No Surrender Impact review. Ultimately, it's a extra show for the sake of shows. It's, I guess, fine if you like the Impact brand or if you like wrestling just for wrestling's sake. There are good things on the show, but at the same time, it is a completely skippable show in terms of long term storytelling, and I'm not a fan of that type of thing. In any event, No Surrender took place on the 19th of February, and ultimately, it's here. It's, um, anyway, countdown to Surrender X Division Championship. Trey Miguel defeating John Skyler in a non-title match. Trey Miguel's return after taking time off to work on injuries and some personal issues. Match sees Skyler cut off Miguel early. Miguel makes a comeback and then ends up winning with a Meteora. Showcase for the return of Miguel. G Miller interviews Team Impact about their match tonight. Everyone's just hyped and hyping each other up. Havoc with Rosemary defeats Tennille. Dashwood with the influence. Dashwood's return after missing out on the last set of tapings. I think that was due to the COVID protocol. Influence have been feuding with inspiration. Match sees Havoc being powerhouse and tossing Dashwood around quite a bit. Dashwood does get the upper hand thanks to Rain and Caleb helping her out outside the ring with distractions. Havoc eventually makes a comeback, but then there's a distraction after the inspiration calls Caleb on the phone and allows Havoc to hit the pile driver on Dashwood for the win. Uh, Lisa Marie Varon and SoCal Val and Kirsty Hemme are doing special commentary through Fight TV. Uh, Chapel Hart opens the show singing the national anthem. Not a fan of this because you're supposed to be an international product now. Why do we need nationalistic songs to open shows? Jake Something defeats Chris Bay, Ace Austin with Madman Fulton and Speedball Mike Bailey to become the number one contender for the X Division Championship. Not a fan of this because Jake Something is, well, just kind of there. Not exactly a match that needed to be here. Match starts with Something going wild all over everyone. Takes down Bay and tosses out Bailey and hits a huge dive onto everyone. Austin would cut him off and hit the springboard spin kick and a foot stomp DDT for near fall. Austin then gets a couple more pin attempts on Something, but Something makes a comeback. Bay then gets up and gets into the match. He takes everyone down, ending a huge tope where he overpassed Bailey and lands on his backside. Bailey follows up with action with the Acai moonsault, taking down everyone, and then goes for the ultimate weapon on Austin, but Something blocks him and powerbombs him, sets him up for the high kick by Bay, but afterwards Bay also takes out Something with a Poison Rana. Bay then hits a big plancha on Austin, but then pin gets broken up by a shooting star press from Bailey. Spots for the sake of spots. Something hits corner spear on Bailey, but Austin blocks. Void slam, and they hit double super kick. Bay hits the art of finesse on Bailey, but Austin saves the pin. Austin takes out Bay mid springboard, but when he gets up for the fold on Something, Something catches him and turns him into the void, and then gets him for the pin in a fantastic match. Eric Young cuts promo on being the best all-around professional, and then that the business has ever seen, and then willing to go on to defend his reputation. Also has to see if White would not take on what he believes in. Jonah defeats Black Traverse with Crazy Steve. I enjoy the Jonah character, but Black Traverse could have been better protected here. Decay has been targeting Jonah for a while. Jonah has a small size advantage over Traverse, but Traverse has the speed and agility advantage here. Managing to use a little bit of Lucha interlock with things here. The match spills to the floor early, and Charus manages to post Jonah and then takes him down with a tope and a chorito. Back in the ring, Jonah once again uses power to block Charus. Military presses him into the top turnbuckle and hits a second on the middle. In the ring, Jonah then keeps working over Charus. And small comeback attempted by Charus, but nothing sticks until Charus lands a reverse slingshot into a crucifix bomb for a near fall. Jonah and Charus traded strikes and body blocks, but in the end, Charus connects with a corner 619 top rope twisting senton for near fall. Charus then goes for a Frankensteiner, but dodges and presses Charus. It's kind of there, and ultimately, it is what's here, and ultimately gets things going in a positive direction there. Hitting the top rope going forward, and then hits a twisting run and catches him with a second top rope Thez press and a powerbomb for 2 count. One clothesline and a two tsunami later, Jonah gets the win. Taurus definitely is the better of the two, honestly, and could have been protected a little better here. Miller introduces Jake Something. She asked him if he thought he had what it takes to defeat Trey Miguel. Something said that he's the current X Division. Is one of the best rosters ever, and he just defeated 3 of those men. Trey Miguel walked up and said that he had no plans on losing the title. Ace Austin also walked up and messed around with both Something and Miguel, so Miguel asked for a tag match between himself and Something and Austin and Fulton. Switchblade Jay White defeating Eric Young. Match starts with an intense back and forth exchange. Shoulder tackles and chops, ends when White finally drops Young with a backdrop and tosses him to the floor. White then goes after Young's back on the apron, but back in the ring, Young hits a reverse whip and sends White shoulder first into the turnbuckle. White then retains with a desperation DDT to get some space there. White then hits a twisting suplex for a near fall, but couldn't follow up with a Blade Runner. Young then comes back with a couple DDTs and clotheslines and high angle DDT for the near fall. Both men reacting to a stalemate at this point, which could only be followed with a chop exchange. Young then gets the better of the exchange, but then he goes off the top rope. White cuts him off before Young could capitalize. Young then drops White and hits the elbow for a 2 count. Then White hits a Uranagi for a 2 count, following up with a Salto suplex and hits a flatliner on the apron. White then goes off the apron for German, but Young blocks, so both men trade eye rakes. The chaos gave Young the opening to hit White with a pile driver. Young then goes for the pile driver, but White rolls him into a near fall. Young attempted again, but White turns into the half and half suplex and Blade Runner for the win. Decent enough match. Then we go backstage. Ace Austin asks Mike Bailey to tag team with him next week against Miguel and Something. Bailey then rejects the idea and said that he and Fulton were better tag team anyway. Austin then tries to start some heat between Bailey and Miguel, claiming that the latter had been behind Bailey's back, talking behind his back. Bailey ends up accepting Austin's proposal. Women's champion Deanna Purrazzo defeats Miranda Algier to retain the championship. Purrazzo's made an open challenge. Azir and Purrazzo open the match with grappling, both women trading momentum, but then go on Azir. Starts gets more and more offense on Purrazzo, allowing Azir to get lucha style, and then Ferrazzo is off her game, running on the floor. Azir then follows up with a dive and an early 2 count back in the ring. Ferrazzo catches Azir with a big boot, and once again, Ferrazzo starts to target Azir's neck and head using her speed and Lucha advantage. Azir makes a bunch of comebacks, managing to bring Ferrazzo down with head scissors, but she's too hurt to really follow up. Both women trade strikes, and Azir drops Ferrazzo with a knee for near fall. Ferrazzo comes back with a suplex, but then goes for Queen's Gambit. Azir then blocks a knee and locks on Miranda Rights. Ferrazzo rolls her over and locks her in the Venus de Milo and tapped out Azir. Great match for both women, and ultimately the energy and crispness of the match is one of the better things on the show. Miller interviews Chapel Hart about being there and supporting Mickie James, who walked up to them. Chelsea Green approaches them too. James offers Green another shot down the road once she's done with Tasha Steelz. Impact Digital Media Champion Matt Cardona defeats Jordana Grace by DQ. Not a fan of this at all. Anyway, so I don't know. I'm not a fan of these intergender things. Cardona offers a handshake to start the match, but Grace goes after him and strikes him, gets an early advantage. Countering a suplex from Cardona, Grace attempts a sleeper on Cardona and manages to bring him down to his knees, following up with a back fist and suplex Cardona from his knees. Cardona then tries to fight and walk out of the match, but Grace then brings him back in the hard way, back in the ring. Cardona hid behind the referee, gets a cheap shot, and Grace goes into the corner, following the cutoff of her momentum. Cardona works over Grace with constant slams and cheap shots. Grace comes back with a roll-up attempt and spinebuster for near fall. Cardona takes down Grace and then can't keep her down. Grace blocks and hammers down on Cardona with a running double knee and then elbows, sending Cardona down to the floor. Cardona then tries to block the dive into the chair like the first match, but instead Grace kicks the chair into Cardona. Grace then goes for the chair, but then the referee takes it away, and the emotions allow Cardona to take her down once again. Now Cardona has the chair, but the referee didn't do anything. Grace low blows Cardona and gets herself DQ'd. After the match, Grace uses the chair on the back of her former opponent. Gia Miller interviews Tasha Steelz about her upcoming match. She says she's always been confident, and tonight's the last night James gets to call herself a champion. Interrupted by someone screaming about finding Edwards taken out. Impact World Tag Team Champions Good Brothers Carl Anderson and Doc Gallows defeats Gorillas of Destiny, Tanga Tonga, and Tangaloa for the deal. I'm not a fan of this, honestly. Gorillas of Destiny should have won just on the basis that they're new. Tama Tonga and Anderson start the match, and it gets pretty heated. Tonga goes right after him with a bunch of strikes and corner to corner. Tonga then lands a splash before Anderson runs to the floor. Back in the ring, Anderson and Tonga keep exchanging slaps and forearms, but again, Tama Tonga enters the top after the running clothesline. Loa finally tags for some double team moves and more work over Anderson, who finally manages to tag out after the referee's distracted. Loa and Anderson go at it pretty aggressively. Loa and Gallows have a hoss fight exchange a little while later, strikes and whips and then tags, but easily overpowers him by Gallows, and then Good Brothers are in control of the match after that. After Brothers are in control, Low gets the hot tag, turns things around, and starts chasing the double team, but Gallows goes in there and breaks the pin up. Anderson gets a near fall for a neck breaker. Brothers hit an assisted neck breaker for a second near fall, but now they go for the Magic Killer, only to have Tama Tonga counter and opened Gallows for a spear, and then takes out a gun stun by Anderson, only to take a gun stun from Tangatoa. Tama Tonga then drops Anderson with a Rolling Thunder and a plancha, but gets a 2 count after the end of that. There's miscommunication with Chris Bay coming down and then distracting the referee, but instead distracted Loa, who eats a choke slam by Gallows. Suddenly, Jay White hits the Blade Runner on Tamatonga and sets up a magic killer for Brothers. And Anderson and Gallows retain after the match. Jay White, Bay, and Good Brothers all salute each other in the middle of the ring. Anyway, so knockouts and championship. Mickie James defeats Tasha Steelz with Savannah Evans. Steelz wins the Ultimate X match to earn this match, and ultimately Mickie James beating her in a decent match is good. Starts pretty heated. They spill the floor. They go right into a test of strength. Both women trade momentum. They brawl on the floor. James drops Steelz with a neckbreaker, but Evans interferes. Back in the ring, Steelz then hits the upper hand, but James still trades, fights back to get some offense before Steelz once again dropped with a kick. James then comes back with strikes, and she low blows Steelz, and then after some clothesline, James hits Steelz for the top rope, Thesz press, and the near fall. James then takes out Evans on the apron, but then distracts, giving Steelz the opening for a cutter. Chelsea Green then runs down, brawls with Evans. Both women tease their signature spots, but then go back and forth and roll-up attempts. James gets a clutch on Steelz, goes for the win. Good match, but backstage, Rhino, McLean, and Sabin get interviewed about missing Edwards, and McLean said that they were going to go after Honor No More, but Rhino now had problems believing with McLean. Swan said that Edwards wasn't cleared to wrestle, but Willie Mack was taking his place. Impact World Champion Moose defeats W. Morrissey. Brian Myers joins commentary for the match. Match starts with a shoulder tackles and exchanges, and then clotheslines. Both men are down. Suddenly Moose lands an early lights out, but Morrissey reacts by rolling out of the ring to save himself from this chaos. Then back in the ring, Moose then goes for a third lights out, but Morrissey dodges it, lands a big boot into the BQE, and then forces Moose to roll out. Morrissey beats up Moose on the outside of the ring, whipping him into the guardrail over and over. Moose then responds by hitting a Uranagi through the timekeeper's table, only to pick him up and post Morrissey recovering and apron bombing Moose. Match goes back into the ring where Morrissey goes for another BQE, but Moose then reverses into the Rana and a dropkick. They exchange chops and then go back to clotheslines. Moose then does a flip out of the clothesline. Anyway, Moose comes back with a third lights out, but Morrissey goes under the ropes again. Morrissey hits BQE, but Moose has his foot under the ropes. Moose blocks another BQE and then goes off a superplex, but can't capitalize on it to win. Moose nips up and hits fourth lights out and gets the win. Match is overall decent action. Honor No More, Matt Taven, Mike Bennett, Kenny King, PCO, and Vincent with Maria Kanellis. Bennett defeated Team Impact, Rhino, Chris Sabin, Steve McLean, Rich Swann, and Willie Mack. Obviously, match starts with a big brawl all around the ring. McLean and Bennett officially start inside. Strike exchange. And things get a little calmer. Sabin and Taven follow on, so then we get pair-ups. Swan and Vincent, PCO and Rhino, and Mac and King. I was excited for PCO and Rhino. They have a Hoss exchange. Team Impact cut someone off, and King gets cut off, and then there's a bunch of quick tag, double teams. McLean and Sabin did some good double team work together. Honor No More comes back, cutting off Sabin for some double team moves at the hands of OGK. Swan then gets a hot tag, taking down Taven and Bennett. sending Honor No More to regroup. Swan then tries to dive on them, but then gets caught and takes out Foot Stomp on the floor for his troubles. Honor No More work over Swan again and a bunch of quick tags. He faces off against PTO and manages to dodge a dive. Swan gets tagged to Mac, who runs wild on Honor No More. Mac and Swan hit an assisted neckbreaker for near fall. Taven breaks that up. Mac then goes for the 6-star frog splash, but gets cut off instead. OGK protein pack for near fall. McLean tags in and hits a crosshair on Vincent, but gets chokeslammed by PCO following a plancha from Taven and top rope leg drop from PCO. King drops Swan with a chin checker and takes out Rhino for that trouble too. Then McLean accidentally takes out one of the referees. King tosses him into the referee. Match continues with everyone hitting dives onto each other because there's no psychology. PCO drops the reambulator on both Mac and Swan, falling Vincent's Red Room, and then everyone's down on the floor. Brawl explodes. PCO hits the PCO assault and takes everyone out. Referee is still down. Back in the ring, Rhino goes for a gore, but Maria protected Bennett. Suddenly, Eddie Edwards runs down to the ring with a kendo stick in hand, sending OGK running, and he sets up Maria for the gore, but instead Edwards turns on Team Impact, takes everyone out with a kendo stick, and allows Kenny King to pin Rhino for the win. And Eddie Edwards has always been Ring of Honor guy, and Edwards then, basically he had done everything he can do. Not a bad show. Overall, a good effort. Better than the Elimination Chamber, honestly. We'll be back with more right after this.